Many self-improvement books teach comfort. They talk about balance, motivation, habits, and positive thinking. David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me is different. It is a book about pain, discipline, trauma, endurance, and refusing to be controlled by weakness. Goggins grew up with violence, poverty, racism, fear, insecurity, obesity, and deep emotional wounds. For much of his early life, he felt trapped by his circumstances and by the story he told himself about who he was. But the book is not mainly about suffering. It is about transformation. Goggins argues that most people live far below their true capacity because they avoid discomfort. They stop when life hurts. They quit when they feel tired. They accept the identity they inherited. They let fear, shame, laziness, and pain define the limits of their life. His message is extreme, but clear. You are capable of more than you think, but you will not discover that capacity in comfort. You discover it through struggle, through discipline, through honest self-examination, through doing what you do not want to do, through facing the parts of yourself you normally avoid. The central lesson of Can't Hurt Me is that the mind can be trained to endure far more than it believes possible. Pain is real. Limits are real. But many of the limits people obey are not physical limits. They are mental limits built from fear, habit, and an unwillingness to suffer for growth. Blink 1. The story you inherit does not have to become your destiny. Goggins begins life in conditions that could have easily defined him forever. He experiences fear, abuse, instability, and humiliation at a young age. His childhood is not safe or gentle. It teaches him pain before it teaches him confidence. As he grows older, he struggles with insecurity, anger, poor academic performance, and a deep sense that he is not enough. This matters because many people quietly accept the identity built by their past. If they were told they were weak, they act weak. If they failed early, they assume failure is who they are. If they grew up in fear, they keep living as if the world is still controlling them. If they were hurt, they may build a life around avoiding more hurt. Goggins' story is powerful because he does not deny the past. He does not pretend trauma was harmless, but he refuses to let it be the final explanation for his life. The past may explain where you began, but it does not have to decide where you end. This is one of the book's hardest lessons. It does not offer comfort by saying life is fair. Goggins knows life is not fair. His argument is that unfairness cannot be allowed to become an excuse for surrender. At some point, a person must decide whether they will keep repeating the identity life gave them or build a new one through action. That decision is not easy. It requires anger, honesty, discipline, and sometimes years of pain. But the first transformation begins when a person says, "This may be my past, but it will not be my prison." Blink 2. Accountability begins with brutal honesty. One of Goggins' central practices is radical accountability. He believes most people lie to themselves. They say they are doing their best when they are not. They say they are too busy when they are avoiding discomfort. They say they cannot change when they have not truly tried. They blame parents, bosses, society, bad luck, stress, genetics, or timing. Some of these obstacles may be real. Goggins does not deny that life can be cruel, but he argues that self-deception is deadly because it keeps people weak. If you lie to yourself about your effort, you cannot improve. If you lie about your habits, you cannot change them. If you lie about your fears, they keep controlling you. This is why he uses the idea of the accountability mirror. Stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself the truth, not the comfortable truth, not the polite truth, the real truth. Where are you failing? What are you avoiding? What promise have you broken? What excuse do you keep repeating? What weakness are you pretending is not there? This kind of honesty can sound harsh, but for Goggins it is necessary. Growth begins when the fantasy ends. You cannot improve a life you refuse to see clearly. The mirror is not about self-hatred. It is about removing illusion. A person can accept that they are currently weak in an area without believing they must stay weak. A person can admit they are overweight, undisciplined, afraid, lazy, or unprepared without turning that into permanent identity. The lesson is that honesty is the starting line. Before discipline, before success, before transformation, there must be truth. No one becomes stronger by protecting their excuses. Blink 3. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline must take over. Goggins strongly challenges the idea that motivation is enough. Motivation feels good. It appears when we watch an inspiring video, read a powerful quote, set a new goal, or imagine a better future. But motivation fades. The weather changes, the body gets tired, the mind gets bored, life becomes stressful, the goal feels far away. The emotional high disappears. This is when most people quit. Goggins argues that discipline matters because discipline does not depend on mood. Discipline means doing what must be done whether you feel like it or not. Run when you do not want to run. Study when you do not want to study. Train when you are tired. Tell the truth when lying would be easier. Stay committed after the excitement has disappeared. In Goggins's life, discipline becomes the tool that rebuilds identity. He does not wait to feel like a different person. He acts like the person he wants to become until the identity slowly changes. This is important because many people wait for confidence before acting. Goggins reverses the order. Action comes first. Confidence follows proof. Every difficult task completed becomes evidence. Every early morning, every workout, every disciplined choice tells the mind, I do not quit just because I feel discomfort. Discipline also creates freedom. This may sound strange because discipline feels restrictive. But a person ruled by impulses is not free. They are controlled by comfort, cravings, fear, and laziness. A disciplined person can choose according to purpose rather than mood. The lesson is simple but demanding. Do not build your life on motivation. Build it on standards. Feelings change, standards hold. Blink 4. The mind quits before the body has reached its true limit. One of the most famous ideas in Can't Hurt Me is that most people stop far earlier than necessary. Goggins argues that when the mind says it is done, the body often still has more to give. He sometimes describes this through the idea that people may be using only a portion of their true capacity. The exact percentage is less important than the point. The first feeling of exhaustion is often not the real limit. It is the mind trying to protect comfort. In physical training, this becomes obvious. A person runs until they feel pain and stops, but if forced to continue safely, they may discover they had more energy. They thought they were at the edge, but they were at the edge of their comfort zone, not the edge of their capacity. This applies beyond fitness. A student thinks they cannot study longer. An entrepreneur thinks they cannot handle more rejection. A worker thinks they cannot learn a difficult skill. A person thinks they cannot survive emotional discomfort. Often the mind says, I cannot, when the more honest phrase is, I do not want to suffer more. Goggins teaches that growth lives beyond that point. Not in reckless self-destruction, but in learning to question the first signal to quit. Pain is information, but it is not always a command. Fatigue is real, but it is not always final. Fear is powerful, but it is not always truth. The lesson is that mental limits must be tested. You do not know your real capacity by listening to comfort. You discover it by going beyond the point where the old version of you wants to stop. Blink 5. Callousing the mind means training yourself through discomfort. Goggins uses the phrase callousing the mind to explain mental toughness. Just as hands develop calluses through repeated friction, the mind becomes tougher through repeated exposure to hardship. Comfort makes the mind soft. Avoidance makes fear stronger. Discomfort faced deliberately makes the mind more resilient. This does not mean chasing pain randomly. It means choosing difficult things on purpose because difficulty builds strength. Wake up early. Exercise when it is uncomfortable. Take the harder path. Have the honest conversation. Do the task you keep avoiding. Put yourself in situations where weakness is exposed and must be trained. Each time you face discomfort and continue, you create evidence that discomfort does not control you. The mind learns. I can suffer and keep going. I can be afraid and still act. I can be tired and still finish. I can be embarrassed and still return. This process matters because life will bring pain whether we choose it or not. Loss, failure, pressure, criticism, illness, and disappointment eventually come. A mind that has never trained discomfort will be shocked by difficulty. A calloused mind is not immune to pain, but it is less easily broken by it. The book's message is extreme because Goggins believes modern life trains people to seek ease. Convenience becomes normal, avoidance becomes normal, quitting becomes normal. He wants readers to reverse that pattern, do something hard every day. Not because suffering is beautiful by itself, but because voluntary hardship prepares you for involuntary hardship. The lesson is that toughness is not something you either have or do not have. It is built. The mind adapts to what it repeatedly faces. Blink 6. Failure is useful when it becomes data. Goggins fails many times. He fails tests, he struggles through training, he faces injuries, he experiences setbacks that would give many people a reasonable excuse to stop. But the book treats failure as part of the process, not proof that the process is over. Failure becomes useful when it is studied. Why did I fail? What weakness did this expose? What did I underestimate? What skill do I lack? Where did I quit mentally? What must I change before the next attempt? This approach transforms failure from humiliation into information. Many people fail and immediately protect their ego. They blame others. They make excuses. They avoid trying again. They decide the goal was impossible. Goggins argues that this response wastes the lesson. Failure is painful because it shows the truth. But that truth can become fuel if you are willing to look at it directly. The problem is not failing. The problem is failing without learning. In Goggins's world, failure is often a mirror. It reveals whether your preparation was real. It reveals whether your desire was strong enough. It reveals whether your standards were too low. It reveals whether you were pretending. This can sound unforgiving, but it is also empowering. If failure is data, then it is not the end of identity. It is feedback for the next version of training. The lesson is that mentally tough people do not romanticize failure, but they do not fear it so much that they avoid growth. They use failure as a report card. Then they return stronger, more prepared, and less willing to lie to themselves. Failure hurts, but if you study it honestly, it can become one of your best teachers. Blink 7. The cookie jar helps you remember your own evidence. Goggins introduces the idea of the cookie jar as a mental tool for difficult moments. The cookie jar is a collection of past victories, struggles, and moments when you overcame pain. When the mind wants to quit, you reach into that memory bank. You remind yourself of what you have already survived. You remember the hard workouts, the difficult exams, the painful conversations, the failures you came back from, the moments when you were sure you could not continue, but did. This matters because the mind often forgets its own strength under pressure. When suffering arrives, the present moment feels like the whole world. The mind says, I cannot do this. The cookie jar answers, you have done hard things before. This is not empty positive thinking. It is evidence-based self-talk. You are not telling yourself a fantasy. You are reminding yourself of proof. Every hard thing you complete becomes a cookie for the future. This is one reason Goggins values difficult challenges. They do not only produce external achievement, they create internal evidence. A person who has repeatedly endured discomfort has memories they can use when new discomfort appears. The cookie jar also helps fight the victim mindset. Instead of focusing only on pain, you remember resilience. Instead of saying, life has hurt me, you also say, I have survived and responded. This tool is useful in fitness, business, studying, recovery, and personal hardship. When fear or exhaustion speaks loudly, memory can speak back. The lesson is that confidence should be built from proof. Do hard things, remember them, use them. Your past victories become fuel for future battles. Blink 8. Taking souls means winning the mental battle. One of Goggins's more intense ideas is taking souls. The phrase sounds aggressive, but in the book it means breaking the expectations of people who doubt, underestimate, or oppose you. It is about winning the mental battle by refusing to be defined by someone else's judgment. When others expect you to quit, you keep going. When they expect weakness, you show discipline. When they assume you are not capable, you become undeniable through effort. This idea comes from environments where pressure, competition, and judgment are intense. Goggins uses opposition as fuel. Instead of letting critics weaken him, he turns their doubt into energy. But the deeper lesson is not about revenge alone. It is about refusing to give other people control over your identity. If someone doubts you and you quit, their belief becomes your reality. If someone underestimates you and you use that as fuel, their doubt becomes part of your training. Taking souls is really about inner dominance. It means the old weak voice loses power. The critic loses power. The comfortable self loses power. The person waiting for you to break does not get the satisfaction. This mindset can be powerful, but it also has limits. Not every part of life should be treated as war. Relationships, health, and long-term peace require more than aggression. But in moments where fear, doubtness, or hostility threatens to break your will, Goggins's mindset can be useful. The lesson is that mental battles are often won before the external result appears. When you decide not to quit, even under pressure, you have already won something important. You have taken back ownership of your mind. Blink 9. Growth requires creating a new identity through repeated proof. Goggins does not transform through one decision. He transforms through repeated proof. He has to become someone new by doing things the old version of himself would not do. This is an important lesson about identity. Many people try to change by thinking differently first. They wait until they feel confident, disciplined, strong, or worthy. Goggins shows a harsher path. Act first. Let identity catch up. If you run every day, you start becoming a runner. If you keep promises to yourself, you start becoming trustworthy to yourself. If you face fear repeatedly, you start becoming brave. If you finish hard things, you start becoming someone who finishes. Identity is built through evidence. The brain watches what you do. If your actions repeat weakness, the identity of weakness grows. If your actions repeat discipline, the identity of discipline grows. This is why small daily choices matter. Every time you choose comfort over commitment, you vote for one identity. Every time you choose the hard right action, you vote for another. Goggins's life shows that identity can be rebuilt even after years of weakness, shame, or failure. But the price is repetition. You cannot become mentally strong by reading one book, having one emotional moment, or making one promise. You become strong through repeated confrontation with discomfort. This also means transformation is never fully finished. The old self can return if the habits return. The mind must keep being trained. The lesson is that you are not only what happened to you, you are also what you repeatedly prove to yourself. A new identity is not declared, it is earned. Blink 10. The book is powerful, but its intensity must be used wisely. Can't Hurt Me is powerful because it destroys excuses. It reminds readers that comfort can become a prison. It shows that people often quit before reaching their real limits. It teaches accountability, discipline, endurance, and personal responsibility. For someone stuck in laziness, fear, self-pity, or weakness, the book can be a shock that wakes them up. But the book's intensity also needs wisdom. Goggins's path is extreme. His physical challenges, pain tolerance, and obsession are not meant to be copied blindly by everyone. There is a difference between disciplined suffering and reckless self-damage. There is a difference between mental toughness and ignoring serious injury. There is a difference between accountability and self-hatred. There is a difference between refusing excuses and denying real limits. A healthy reader should take the principle, not always the exact method. The principle is to stop lying to yourself. Train discomfort, build discipline, face fear, learn from failure, push beyond soft limits, take responsibility for your life. But wisdom also matters. Recovery matters. Relationships matter. Health matters. Purpose matters. A person should become stronger, not merely more punishing toward themselves. The best use of Goggins's message is not to copy every extreme act. It is to ask where you have become too comfortable. Where are you quitting too early? Where are you hiding behind excuses? Where is your mind softer than it should be? Where do you need to prove to yourself that you can do more? The final lesson is that most people have unused strength inside them. Goggins's life is an extreme example of what can happen when a person decides to go find it. Key takeaways from the book. Can't Hurt Me teaches that people are often capable of far more than their minds initially believe. David Goggins emphasizes brutal honesty, accountability, discipline, callosing the mind, learning from failure, and pushing beyond comfort. The book shows that identity is rebuilt through repeated proof, not through motivation alone. Its central lesson is that pain can either control you or train you, depending on whether you avoid it, excuse it, or use it to become stronger.